Today's social media segment is brought to you by Terrebonne General Health System. Your health is our legacy. Rouse's, you're either local or you're not. Buick, the craft of modern luxury. St. Martin and Bork, know your rights. All right, welcome back to Bayou Town. We're going to give you some levels and what's going on with the floodgates and the tides and everything that's going on with the tropical systems out in the Gulf of Mexico. The parish president is here, Jason Bergeron. Tony Alford, the president of the Levee District and executive director of the man in charge of all this stuff. Reggie, who's a few days left, right?
How long? It's getting close.
All right, but you'll still be around, right?
We'll get him an extension.
Yeah. All right, so look, to close or not to close. Jason, if we can bring up the map that we're just showing of the activity in the Gulf, if we could, just showing all. And that's what's driving everything. These systems, when they start coming up, and naturally we have one that's going to follow Alberto, really the same path. And this is what these gentlemen on the news desk have to juggle through. Now, to start off, we'll start with the parish president, who's been traveling around and checking things out and relying on information. This was a little tricky, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you look at, again, we had a lot of conversations about floodgates and water in yards. But what I think is important to look at when you look at the water that was in Grand Isle, I've seen pictures this morning of water that's in Galveston. That north wind, that south wind, coming out where with the storms rotating around, pushing water, winds blowing. We just got to look at, again, and we've met with the Levee District, on a regular basis about how we move water. And that's what, this conversation about is when you say to close or not to close, there probably isn't a better title because depending on whether it's, west or south or north, depending on where it is and how the wind's blowing. There's so many factors that have to go into play that have to be accounted for to determine how we move that water around.
And not only the water, and I'll turn to Tony and Reggie here too, and we've talked about this for years. It's a tricky situation. And Reggie, you've seen a few of these over the years. Tony, you've seen quite a bit of them. This one, to me, has been one of the trickiest ones because it doesn't define itself real early what it's going to do. It keeps playing, and the moon's playing with the tides, and the wind's coming in, then the tide goes out. This one's been a little quirky, hasn't it?
Well, that system we have, there's no manual to go to with that system. This is the first system of its kind, and so you have to know when to close and open, and based on the tides and the winds and all that stuff. And so it has been tricky. And look, we always talk about this, and it almost sounds like I'm kind of being a little smart ass saying it like this, but this is the truth. We start getting calls over the last couple of years about water being in ditches and water being in yards. And the first thing we always ask, and we always welcome everybody, if you got water in your house, you need to call us because we need to know about it. It's been water in yards, in ditches, and we call that progress because we used to get those calls and it was water in houses, right?
12,000.
Yeah.
Homes.
Well, not only Ida, not only Katrina and Rita,
right,
but all those little storms, right? And so now we've got them in there in the yards instead of the houses. Mm-hmm. And there's a structure that we're building, and we've issued the order to move forward. It's a long contract, 1,400 days, okay, 4 years. And when we build that structure, and when we get that structure in place, you won't have those winds putting water even in the yards or ditches because the navigational canal will be closed off in about 4 years. But it's a process, right? We built all of this in a matter of 12 to 15 years. We did a lot of construction, a lot of projects in a short period of time, relatively speaking, right?
Yeah.
And we still have some left to do. And this is the big part we have left to do to stop even that from happening.
So in 4 years, it's almost like we're going to bring in the bullpen, the closing guys going to come out And that's what we're waiting on. But until then, it's a little touch and go.
Linchpin of the whole system
Yeah.
is what we're putting in place right now.
Let me ask you, Reggie, when we talk about it, God, we've seen this so many times. You're also dealing with the fishermen
That's right.
who are trying to get out. You're dealing with the residents who are a little concerned about the water coming in. There's multiple avenues, and I want you to explain to me, because maybe this will sort of help people watching. If we go to the Bayou Terrebonne lock and if we go to the Boudreaux Canal lock, what are the levels on the inside of those locks? And the biggest question I need to ask you is why? Explain that to the people, because that may help explain something to the public.
Well, first of all, Morganza to the Gulf did not switch all of Terrebonne Parish into a forced drainage area. So you're not pumping the entire parish. The purpose of this system and all these floodgates and levees is for tidal surges for tropical events. It is much easier of a decision making for us three for a named tropical storm coming right at us, because you close everything and everybody's hunkered down. But when you have sustained southeast winds in the spring, like you did this year,
Yep.
and sustained southeast winds in the early summer, like you had from this Alberto that popped up in the Gulf, that becomes more difficult, because it's not bad enough where people can still operate navigation, but it's putting high enough tides where it puts water in people's yards. So some of the floodgates will have more flexibility than others. The HNC Bubba Dove, the Corps has a pretty strict, tight restriction on us. You have to have a named tropical event affecting us, and 2 feet of water or better expected. We didn't have, this little storm didn't get named till Wednesday afternoon when it was fixing to make landfall, and at the time we were going into a low tide. This week, besides all these southeasterly winds, you had the 4 or 5 day cycle where you have the lunar tides, the extraordinary tides. We run on a 28-day cycle with the moon. 1 week out the month, you have very high tide cycles, 1.5 foot difference. During another week out the month, on the opposite side, it's only a few inches difference. This Alberto happened to hit at the same time we have the extraordinary high tides in that same week, and that makes a huge difference. Now, what you were talking about earlier, comparing comparing
Bayou Terrebonne.
Bayou Terrebonne and Boudreaux Canal. So we have I had somebody on the staff put together the gauges in the last 7 days. Those 2 floodgates were converted to locks by the parish government recently. Those are the 2 of the old sector gates. So Boudreaux Canal was the first one converted. Boudreaux Canal is the only community in Terrebonne Parish where we can control the water levels on the entire community, including the bayou, because there's an upper Little Caillou floodgate stopping water from the north.
Correct.
We have to remember the Houma Navigational Canal just about trumps everything else in Terrebonne Parish is on tides. Bayou Grand Caillou floodgate and Fargo Canal in Dulorge, when the water's coming up the channel, it's actually going out of those floodgates. It runs backwards because the channel overrides everything else. So when the channel fills up the intercoastal, you can flood from the north. Now, with the Upper Little Caillou floodgate, that old floodgate built in the 1990s, you can close off the north side, and the parish has a pump station to pump down the bayou in Little Caillou and control it. So look at the Boudreaux Canal lock during the last 7 days, and you're going to see the highest the water got on the outside was 2.07. The highest got on the inside was 0.56. Now, that's just like a low tide.
Yeah.
So we were able to keep Little Caillou, the community of Chauvin, down at a low tide level during a tropical event and during all this mess in the Gulf of
Was that
Mexico.
about 1.5 foot differential? Which
But look at Bayou Terrebonne now. Now, Bayou Terrebonne is a little further to the east, and usually you get hit with higher tides. The highest the water got in Bayou Terrebonne Wednesday was 3.55. But on the inside, even though we continued operating that lock, it got to 2.25.
That's significant. Yeah.
Why did the water on the inside get to 2.25 by Terrebonne and Montague, but not in Localia? Because you have no way of pumping out Bayou Terrebonne at the floodgate at this time, and you have no floodgate on the north side, south of the intercoastal. The parish has long-term plans of putting gates just south of the intercoastal, like at the twin span bridges, and at the on Company Canal. But until that's done, you have a wide open system to the north, and when you have these sustained winds pushing water in the intercoastal, you can only operate for a short period of time. So you only had a difference of a little over a foot when you had a much bigger difference in Little Collier and much lower water levels. So that's why.
Yeah, let me ask the parish president, you've been riding around. Any concerns out there from the public, or are they pretty much sort of used to this? What's your feel for?
No, I think, and I talked about this last time I was on, I think that there are concerns from an aspect that, we had droughts, we had lower water for a period of time, and I think people kind of look at that as being the norm. And so when you had water, I think we were looking at, 2-foot differences or even more than that between last year and this year. And then to get water in yards, I hear a lot about how we've spent all this money and we're still getting water in yards. And I look back to when I was a kid and when Tunnel Boulevard and Prospect flooded. I can't remember the last time that's happened. So, as we continue to make progress, we still have, like Tony talked about, the Corps of Engineers has to plug an area between Miners Canal and Monmouth's Ridge that really doesn't have a levee at all, right? So we still have some areas we have work to do. And when I hear about the Houma Navigational Canal, I reference it to the Mystico in New Orleans for the longest time, that was that open channel that water kept coming in. So, we're making progress, we're working on projects, and know that the most important thing to all of us up here is to keep water out of houses.
Yeah, that's why we used to call it the Little Mystico, the agency, like you said.
Yep.
But Tony, explain to the people, because this is confusing and it's tricky. You got the Corps you're dealing with all the time.
Yeah.
And ultimately it falls on the parish president too with the Corps.
Yeah.
And you gotta behave in front of the Corps. I beat them up for many years,
little
but
bit.
they started coming up. They started delivering. But
Yeah.
all right, you get a named storm. They want you in the cone. They said if you get in the cone, then you'll be able to do some things. But we weren't in the cone on this named storm, so
Yeah.
you can't do everything you want because it was a named storm, but we were just getting the effects, but we weren't in the cone.
Well, so in particular instances, you have to figure out how to work with and around sometimes. So I'm probably the only guy in town was hoping to be in a cone last year, so we could finish that last 5 miles. But at this point, I got, call a spade a spade. This colonel with the Corps, Colonel Jones, is really working very hard, pushing regulatory to be able to finish that last 5 miles.
He's been one of the best.
He has, and he tries. He gets caught up in regulatory and things that tie us all up. But you're seeing a guy that's really working very hard. In fact, they're supposed to break ground, supposed to open bids next week on that last 5 miles. And so they should be breaking ground pretty fast. So we're excited about that. So now the dilemma is, okay, if we are put in the cone, and it does authorize us, it's what they call a trigger for what they consider an imminent threat, right?
Right.
So if that does happen, what do you do now? Do you let them continue and do their work because they're right on the preface of being able to move this thing forward now? Or do you move forward and act on an emergency, on an imminent threat, and build it yourself?
Well, if that's a question, I guess you don't trump the colonel and you give him the liability.
You right. Well, and again, you have our partner. We signed a partnership agreement a couple of years ago, so you have to work with him. We want to work with him, especially with this colonel and what he's trying to do. So, we're excited about them doing it. At the same time, you still have to. The levee board declared an emergency a couple of nights ago,
Right.
so that we could do lower Dularge. Now we've been working on the east side of lower due large to try to get it up to 12. On the other side, you've got a little subsidence. So we were able, Gordy and Glenn Leday Jr. were able to get a little bit of money to be able to put on the west side and be able to build that up so, it doesn't come over
But then it's
the west
if
side.
the Corps builds, if y'all give them the reins and the Colonel builds, doesn't it save you local monies where you could move them around?
Well,
Or is it all out the same
it's
pot?
it's a double-edged sword.
Okay.
So right now there's about 380, actually a little over 400 million that's been sitting there. Well, the Corps has to put 2 floodgates in the coastal, okay, which are giant floodgates. I wonder if we'll have enough money even for that. And they're engineering other parts, including that 5-mile section. Their estimate's about $50 million for that last 5 miles. We feel like we can do it for $25 million. Okay.
But the rules have changed,
But you're
huh?
taking that money out of that $400 million that they can be using to put the floodgates in intercoastal. So it's sort of there's a lot of, it's not an easy, hey, this is the decision, this is where we have to go. There's a lot of back and forth deciding what's the best thing for Terrebonne to do and how fast can we get it
Just
done.
to be candid with the audience, too, the rules have changed because the unionization.
Right.
one.
Well, and let me say this too. So with the new administration in the parish, we're talking about, for example, the parish has flexi floats over there in lower due large. So we're trying to figure out, and Jason and I are talking about the possibility of moving that flexi float and getting it closer to the pit. Where the dirt's coming from, so we can go and haul that dirt and maybe not bust up the roads and leave the roads as filthy as when
good
you haul
idea.
dirt and get it closer to where you're building. And so that's been a conversation we've had, and it's a good interaction with the new administration and the levy board, and we're making some things happen.
And that's
So
going to save several
nothing's been dropped.
$100,000.
How much can you put on those floats?
How much?
Yeah, how much dirt? A lot of dirt?
It's qualified to move dump trucks with dirt across.
In other words,
across
it's a bridge. It's a temporary bridge, Martin.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
It's a temporary
And you can
bridge.
move it.
It's a
Right.
floating bridge.
You save between $4 and $5 per cubic yard if we move this thing further closer to the pit when we're building the west side. So you're saving money, you're not busting up the roads, and again, it's in coordination with the parish that we're making these decisions.
Yeah, so how much interaction? I know y'all talking a lot, but on a typical day for the public, how much are y'all on the phone with the parish president trying to work all these things? Because this is and I want to say this to the public, it's always been complicated.
Yeah.
But the only way to do this is communication. I know y'all been talking a lot.
Well, him and I talk, I would say, maybe not that much about those particular things because he has people that he has to do these things, and we do too, right? That work full time for us. And so you like for them to interact a little bit, and then Jason and I, we'll talk about it and say, this makes sense, and this is what my guy said, or this is what my guy said. And again, it's good coordination to make it happen.
I know what Jason likes because he's a big computer guy. That telemetry is pretty good. That telemetry tells a lot. Reggie, what can we do the boaters, like we said, have different routes,
Right.
to get out. And those, to me, they're very concerned. That's their livelihood. I get it. I understand it. But talk about those routes
Well,
that they could use. They may have
first
to
of
go a
all,
little
Bayou
longer.
Terrebonne has a lock on it, so you can get through. Yeah, we are operating Bayou Terrebonne right now as we speak. Our operations director called both Tony and I, and he's recommending that Cocodrie stays closed for now because it was 2.6 feet on the outside, so opening that gate will flood some people. That was a substantial difference between the inside and outside. So if somebody wants to get out, the place they would have to get out from the Chauvin area would be to go through Lake Boudreaux down the channel because the channel is open. That's there are routes, but it's going to be an inconvenience to go around until tomorrow. We expect by tomorrow morning to have everything open because the way the cycles are running is still high, but not as high as Wednesday.
Worst thing you want to do is close those floodgates and, somewhat stop some of the water from coming in and then open them up too early.
Right.
And you got water in people's yard or maybe even worse.
Yeah.
And that's what you don't want to happen.
But
And
that's been the open or close.
That's right. That's
Open or clean. And Greg's got a pretty good handle on that. He must stay up at night studying.
Oh, he does.
He does. Yeah, they were up 4 or 5 in the morning, starting to close some of these floodgates.
Yeah, so
and seeing what's going on. They monitor 24 hours.
But the other thing, and I'm sure the parish president has his own people too, but we got 5 ways for water to get in. And they always say, well, Lafourche has this and Lafourche has that. They got one way.
That's right.
Yeah, we got 5 ways, and that's a monster.
And you know I think that's why my thoughts is why we've taken so long to do what we've done in putting protection in place, right? You got 5 different bayous and a whole lot of opinions on what should or shouldn't happen. Yeah. And that's been somewhat of a difference, for us to do it than one
that's
bayou.
What the parish president was saying when we showed this map before.
Yeah.
He said, look how vulnerable we are. And Jason's correct. But the thing is, back in the day when the monies were flying around and we had choices, we had marsh.
That's right.
Yeah.
So in fairness to the reps way back, and of course, Mr. Talbot passed away and Mr. Lodge took over, Judge Lodge eventually. But if I were in their position 40 years ago, I'd have probably used the money for something else because we were pretty good.
Right.
And the marsh makes a huge difference, Martin.
It makes a tremendous difference. But after that, all hell broke loose. So.
Erosion was not the big issue back then. Yeah. And it was very few people that were really concerned about it happening at the pace it's happening today, right?
Let me ask the parish president, when you were campaigning and looking at it, you knew about it. You've been around here forever. But now that you're on the ground, just moving and looking at everything, people that don't see it by helicopter or really get on these levees and all, it's a massive project, isn't it?
Yeah, and talking about how their guys are always looking at levees and the data, and we have our own drainage levees and different things that we have that are parish maintained, and so our guys are always looking at that. We have most of our stuff's on systems where we can read it. For the stuff that isn't, we're going to get it there, and we're always working together. But even when you talk about the 5 ways for water to get in, that don't include anything coming from the north, right? So the Atchafalaya is high right now.
Very true.
Basically everything in Lafourche Parish dumps into Terrebonne Parish with the Chacoola Basin. So, we're having to manage the water that's coming from the bottom and the water that's coming from the top. And a lot of times we get caught in between. I mean, you could look at Bayou Terrebonne right now and see how high the water is. And so, as you look at a storm that's hitting Mexico, how does that affect the everyday resident? When you look at, and I've had this conversation with people this week, I think some people in North Terrebonne, or that the issue in the lower part of Terrebonne Parish with water is as foreign as an issue to the people in North Terrebonne as it is in people in North Louisiana. And so we have to make sure that, everybody knows a storm that is that far away has this kind of impact. And when you look at, as storms get closer to us, and whether they're on the east side or the west side of us, you move Ida over further west, and we're in a bigger problem than what we had last time. And so, again, Ida changed the topology and the hydrology of everything, right? Some of the marsh that Ida got rid of made us more vulnerable, and we got to work again a little bit harder to kind of push the Gulf further out. And so it is a constant battle. And again, we met with the levee district. Once I took office, it is about managing and moving water. That's the business I feel like we are in. And every year we get more and more in that business.
And that's big business. And Reggie, you'll remember me and you were splitting hairs over whether Rita was 9, 11, or 10 on the tidal surge. And we finally just compromised and said 9 foot 11 is 10,
Yeah.
But that storm was so far away and pushed that kind of surge. And that's what Jason was just
And
talking about.
flooded 11,000 homes.
Right.
Yeah.
But look how far away it was, but it was west of us.
Yeah.
It
Now
hit
we're in better shape
right.
now than we were back then,
Lot
but
better.
we still have footage of it coming over the levees, and I mean, it was, I don't ever want to see that again. Plus, we saw
one thing,
Ida, which was pretty bad.
follow up what the parish president just said. So he talked about parish levees. Those, especially the ones on the south side of the parish, serve a very, very big purpose. So what we have kind of built in Terrebonne Parish is a multiple lines of defense strategy.
Yeah.
So the Morganza alignment is not the Great Wall of Terrebonne Parish. It's not the only protection you have. It is a major line, but you also have these, on this map, you have the green lines on this map. Those are primarily the parish drainage, old parish drainage levees that have been improved. So if you have overtopping on Morganza, then you have another line of defense. And look for Hurricane Barry, when Reach J2 between Montague and Pointe-aux-Trembles was under construction. Thank God for that parish levee, because it stopped Montague from flooding.
That was what, 8 or 9, if I remember right?
It got to 9.1, and by the time it got to the parish drainage levee, it was at 6.
Yeah, we were out there filming
And,
with y'all. That was pretty
And look,
impressive.
but the redundant levees, we call the parish drainage levees on the south side the redundant system now, as a backup system, and it's just as important as any other line
More
of
importantly,
defense.
between the levees is the reservoir.
The reservoir.
And it holds a
That's
lot of water.
That's right.
You know?
Yep.
So, I mean, this is so just in a nutshell, as we move forward, you know, people have been asking me, when they can open this, when they can open that, I go, I don't know. I'm not the parish president. I'm not the levy district. But just, we still have some factors that we can't move on until the moon cooperates and the storms cooperate. So it's just a wait and see, isn't it?
Yes.
Just wait and see it. And again, you know, I know people have some water in some ditches and people have some water in their yards. We're working every day to make sure we keep the water out of the houses. And as we progress through this and get more things completed, there's even going to be less of the opportunity of water being in the yards. And as the hydrology changes and as we build more land and everything else that we have going on with all our coastal restoration projects, you know, like Tony talked about earlier with Gordy and all, and him being a part of CPRA, you know, CPRA's responsibility is to help us not only protect what we have, but also build for what we lost. So as we continue to do that, and that gets funded through some things that we're fighting for with sharing offshore revenues, which is what we just came back from DC doing, was to get more money into those systems to build better protection and to also restore what we've lost.
Yeah, we got good
we got a lot of work to do.
representation. Yeah, hopefully we can get those monies in, and you know, with all, you know, the saving grace I saw in this one. And Reggie, we've seen it before when you talk about the rainfall. If we'd have got the rainfall that Texas got, we're sitting on this just talking about a totally
That's exactly
different
right.
area. We got pretty lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make people feel good that had water, you know, around their camps and all that, but the rainfall didn't come.
Yeah. Right. And think about the parishes, the pump stations, the retention that you guys are still working on, right? 4,000 acres of retention. I mean, we are setting this parish is set up for dramatic rainfalls, storms. I remember when I started on the levee board, it was always, you know, I get questions about the Barry Islands, and I said, well, look, my job is to put this levee together, a line in the sand, right?
Yeah.
But we knew that wasn't the only thing that we had to do. Right. We knew we had to protect the Barry Islands, refurbish the Barry Islands, restoration efforts. Well, guess what's so neat now? Now, in addition to the parish and the levee board, the CPRA, now, in fact, we have a CPRA meeting we're bringing to Houma next Wednesday. And we're talking about putting those breakwater rocks in front of those Barry Islands. We're talking about rebuilding some of the islands. We're talking about restoration efforts, as in pumping in slurry and replenishing land and land bridges. We've got all this stuff actually coming to fruition now, where we only talked about it, only hoped for it at one time. We thought, I tell you what, when we issued that lock, that was so close to not being issued from a money standpoint. There was only so much money set aside.
Yeah.
And there were two bidders. And they were very far apart, $200 million apart.
Yes.
And the one that got it, they're doing a great job. Equipment's going out there right now, but we were really close to maybe not having that happen at all. Well, I hate to say at all. I think eventually it would have happened, but
That's sea level local.
right.
Local
And look, and those guys are getting after it, and they came in with the numbers that were able to fit and had the money to spend. And, thanks to the CPRA and some of the stuff that Gordy did way back when, 12 years ago, you got that money.
That's right.
We finally just starting to put it on the ground, and that's going to be huge to stop that salt water from coming in and keep the fresh water within the system to refurbish all.
I'll say this in a very complimentary way. I think we got 3 pit bulls going after it. We got the parish president who's going to go after it. We got y'all in the levy district that are going to go after it. And we got CPRA and Gordy that are going to go after it. So I can't see a bad situation.
And I
the way
think
y'all are
in the
attacking
next
it.
2 weeks, you go see an announcement from CPRA about some Barry Island stuff, which I think the public will be very pleased about.
So I think it's good y'all all trying to get to the same, goal line, which is a good thing. Let's just sort of wrap it up. We'll start with the parish president. Anything that we haven't covered you'd like to let the public know at this point?
Well, I think it's most important to know, and some other things we're going to be releasing and talking about. But to me, it's all about working together, right? To me, it doesn't matter how we got here. I believe that you have to know your past to move forward. But I believe in the process of moving forward, we're going to take the resources we have. We're going to work very hard together and do everything we can to keep one drop of water from going in any resident's home, no matter where you live in the parish. And so that's what I want to make sure everybody understands, is that we get up every day to work hard to make sure that everybody in the parish is doing everything they need to do, and that we're cooperating with other organizations, whether it be the levy district or the sheriff's office, and everything we can do to keep our residents safe, to keep the projects moving along, and to make sure that we're addressing the issues of our residents.
All right, Mr. Alford?
I agree with the parish president. We're going to work together for the betterment of Terrebonne Parish and Lafourche. We've been all of us working together.
You've been helping Lafourche too.
And things look really bright for Terrebonne and Lafourche, and I'm excited about it. I think it's only going to continue to get better, and it's going to get better at a more rapid pace, I think, at this point than 20 years ago when we were saying, boy, can't wait or wish we could do this or that. Those things are taking place right now, and it's going to be great things for Terrebonne and Lafourche to move forward. Bright future.
And I'm gonna go to Reggie now because you got a few days left. But I promise you, in the next storm, you'll be here as a paid HTV contributor.
Well, I want to thank y'all. And
I like the way you negotiate. Are you coming in for free, by the way? No.
yeah, that's right. I want to just one thing mention. This might be my last interview before my retirement. I'll be in the background more, but in my 43 years of public service, if you look at all the number of years in the Senate and the House as a state representative, as a cop, there's only one that I did more than 10 years, and that's at the levy district. So I want to thank this guy for dragging me and convincing me to resign my Senate seat, because he gave me my last public mission. But it has been great, and I think we've made a great deal of progress in this parish in the last 15 years.
Y'all made a tremendous look. I've been here for 42 years, and I've seen the progress, and y'all have done leaps and bounds. The progress that if this parish just reflects back in '85 when Juan hit, and what we went through, and just keeps moving, and some of the things that were done, some of the lucky things that happened, some of the things you had to bulldoze your way through, or pit bull your way through.
That's right.
It's been tremendous. And Reggie, thank you. You've been a
We're
big
very
part of it.
fortunate to have Reggie in this parish.
Thank
and
you.
helping us push everything forward.
And I know they had the retirement deal. I was actually in DC at that time, and I get an opportunity. But thank you for all your service. And
Thank
what you've
you,
done for
Mr.
Terrebonne
Thank
Parish.
you, Jason.
Yeah. And of course, we look forward to seeing you progress and do everything too. And like I said, this is a monster of a problem, and it's not going to go away, and everybody's got to pitch in. But thank y'all for joining.
Yeah,
We
thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks for all you do.
All right, thanks. All right, we will take a break. We'll be back with more here on HTV. Don't go away.
Selecting an insurance provider for your business is a big decision.
With over 26 years of experience, our offered team is your solution for quality and proven coverage.
The customer service you remember from years ago is what we pride our team on.
We know how important your company is to the community.
From small businesses to large businesses, Alford & Associates can manage your insurance. It's our job.
Alford and Associates, benefiting your employees and protecting your business.